anytime something really, really big happens in any sport, now a Mount Rushmore conversation emerges. And I get that. Actually, I kind of like participating in them. So, forgive me for this lazy device on this episode. Good morning to you. Good Tuesday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Penguins. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into football and or baseball, I also offer daily shots of Steelers and Pirates in the same place that you found this. Hope you'll check those out as well. Penguins and Blackhawks tonight at PPG Paints Arena. That's a 7:08 p.m. face-off. I'll be there covering it for DK Pittsburgh Sports because we're running out of hockey. That's why. I'd either do that or I'd be over at PNC Park watching Paul Skeens pitch. And while the latter is awfully entertaining, I've got all summer to do that, and I'm going to check out some pucks. I also want to see the kids some too. But while the subject du jour remains super fresh in everyone's minds, and the entire extraordinary weekend that surrounded Alexander Ovechkin passing Wayne Gretzky, wow, that still feels really weird to say, in goals, 895 to 894. One of the things that invariably comes up, because this is the way sports fans, and for that matter, sports people like me, go, is that we want to rank things. And the way we rank things now, most commonly it seems, is through Mount Rushmores. And Mount Rushmores are easy because no one ever asks you to enumerate within the Mount Rushmore. Have you noticed that? Like, you just have to come up with 4 names. You don't even have to go 1, 2, 3, 4 with it. So it's convenient. It's also very, very, very hard. Arguably harder than ever. And I'm going to start, before I get into any names, by raising a couple of pet peeves about hockey Mount Rushmores. 3 of them, actually. One is that we're almost entirely doing away with hockey's distant past. I never like that. When someone says to you, name the Pirates' best player ever, the correct and only responsible answer is Hannes Wagner. Yeah, but he played 120, 130 years ago. Baseball was really different then. And I always come back to them by saying, okay, do you want people in 100 years or 120 or 30 years to say that Mario Lemieux didn't count? Okay, next subject. Hockey doesn't have that. Hockey respects Rocket Richard, for example, with the annual goal-scoring trophy, but what he did, and being the first guy to 50 and all that other stuff, as one-dimensional as he demonstrably was, it's irrelevant now. We're starting to see the same related to Gordie Howe, and I don't like that. 2, somebody really needs to think about this one. Have you ever noticed that there's not a goaltender on anyone's list, while at the same time, we're all very casual in saying, oh, it's the sport's most important position. Absolutely the most important position. Can't win a cup without this or that level of goaltending. So if I say to you that Dominik Hasek was the most, pun intended, dominating goaltender ever, and let's just say that you agree that it's him. As soon as I say he should be on the hockey Mount Rushmore, it's like, what? Be serious. No, man, he's a goalie. That just doesn't fly for me. It just doesn't. Hasek went to Nagano, Japan, and won the Olympic gold medal for the Czech Republic all by himself. Meaning, when you weigh the overall caliber of the rosters that the Czechs had to beat, with all due respect to Jaromir Jagr, Martin Straka, Robert Lang, and those guys, they'll all tell you the only reason they got that gold was the Dominator. We can't include him. The third one is, what level of hockey moron do you have to be to put together any hockey Mount Rushmore at any phase of anything and leave Mario off? I have actually seen some of that over the past 2-3 days, and I hope it's a 2 or 3 day aberration because, well, it's embarrassing for them. It's embarrassing for the people who do this to display that ignorance about the single greatest talent to ever play this sport. Mario, if you want to go for a basketball comparison, since people love to do this in basketball even more, he's the Michael Jordan. It doesn't matter who ends up with more points. It doesn't matter if it's LeBron James beating out Wilt Chamberlain's record. It's just that Jordan was the greatest. We saw it with our own eyes if we were fortunate. In all likelihood, no one will ever be greater. The same goes in hockey. There's only one Mario. So who actually makes my cut? Do you give weight to Ovechkin because he's now the leading goal scorer and there's nothing more important in hockey than scoring goals? You certainly think about it, but I'd also say that you certainly don't do it. Respectfully, of course, I have a thing about players who have more goals than they do assists. Maybe I shouldn't, but I do. And when I look at the NHL's all-time scoring leaders, and I see that in the top 10, there are no players with fewer than 1,000 assists. The fewest assists among anybody there is Joe Sakic at 1,016. Ovechkin is now the 11th all-time overall scorer, meaning in points. He has 895 goals. He has 724 assists. Simple deduction here. The only reason that he's not in the top 10 all-time points, and of course he's going to pass Sakic in that regard at some point fairly early next season. He's only about 30 behind. Is that, plain and simple, he hasn't been and isn't as complete a player. He can move up past Sakic, who's at 10th. He's not going to move past Sid, who's at 9th, and he's probably not going to catch Mario, who's at 8th. Mario is currently 104 points ahead of Ovechkin in obviously far, far, far fewer games, like 500 fewer games. So I'm not putting him on. Sid is a different case and has seemed to have come up in a lot of these conversations as well because, you know, the whole Sid and Ovi thing for the past 20 years. Sid has a better argument, I believe, than Ovechkin does, but Sid's going to have a really, really rough time getting on there, almost regardless. Because, again, if you step back to hockey's default Mount Rushmore forever and ever, it's been Gordie Howe, Bobby Orr, Wayne Gretzky, Mario Lemieux, giving them to you in chronological order of their careers, obviously. So what has to happen for Sid to get on is that, in all likelihood, Howe has to come off. And man, there's going to be heavy, heavy, heavy resistance in that regard for a long time. I can make that case, I feel. Howe achieved most of what he achieved through toughness and longevity, not necessarily, razzle-dazzle highlights and some superlative skill. And while that's awesome, while his overall achievement playing for the Hartford Whalers whenever he was 52 or something, that's wonderful. But yeah, I mean, he would be the one to go, and people just aren't going to be casual about letting him go. And then if they do, and you put Sid on, that's where Ovechkin comes back into play. Well, they were peers. They were both the stars of their generation. Everything about them is a shared existence. And that is where you run into dopes leaving Mario off. When we come back, J1Q. This episode is brought to you by Bet Online, your number one source for all your summer sports needs this season. From Major League Baseball, golf, NHL, NBA playoffs. Get the latest odds and lines, including all team matchups, player props, odds on just about everything that's out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Bet Online, where the game starts. Today's J1Q is wow level outstanding. Comes from John, who says, DK, Major League Baseball now recognizes stats from the Negro Leagues. The NFL now recognizes stats from the All-America Football Conference. Yet the NHL, which absorbed 4 entire franchises The World Hockey Association in the late 1970s does not recognize WHA stats. Are they still offended that players jumped leagues for more money? They'll never change it now, as Alexander Ovechkin would still be in pursuit of Wayne Gretzky, who had 940 goals between the two leagues, and Gordie Howe, who had 975 between the two leagues. Yes, sir. This is some serious symbiosis between our opening segment and the J1Q, and you're going to have to trust me that my process for finding these things isn't anywhere near that coordinated. John, the best answer that I can give is to point to what baseball did most recently, and that was in recognizing Negro League stats as being, well, let me rephrase that. The Negro Leagues as having been a major league, even though there was actually more than one Negro League and all kinds of other details. What they did was they basically said, let's tabulate the statistics as smoothly as possible, which was very hard to do because scorekeeping, reporting were really sketchy in those leagues. Not all the newspapers were running the box scores. Some games were in the league. Some games, a lot of them actually, were exhibitions. So what they said at one point, plain and simple, was, listen, we don't care. Whatever stats we have are the stats we have, and we're putting them in there. And they really didn't worry. You could tell just from the way the announcement was phrased what the implications were in large part, if we're being honest here, because this was a long time ago. The Negro Leagues were, fortunately for the betterment of society, a long time ago. So that makes it easier, the time and everything else that's passed. The other thing Major League Baseball did was bring in a lot of related professional leagues from the late 1800s that were considered to be at an equal level as, say, for example, the National League and the American Association and everything else. All of those people and all of the people who would be directly affected are, of course, long, long gone. You could even say that about the NFL and the AFL. That's a closer parallel for this because the NFL and the AFL merged. That started to happen with the Super Bowl, and in 1970, it took hold for good. All of those stats for all of those teams and all of those players, whether they were part of the merger or not, are in NFL statistical lore. So why does the NHL not do it? I'll give you one reason, and it's not really a very good one. I don't hear anybody bring it up, like anywhere. John, I swear to you, your question here is the first time I've ever even thought about it, much less seen, heard, or read about it somewhere else. Because it's not just the players and the goals and the points that you're talking about here. Offering one example that's near to my heart, the Winnipeg Jets have only ever won championships in the WHA. They won what was called the Avco Cup. They were actually seen as the preeminent franchise in that league when they had Bobby Hull and a lot of other outstanding players. So they get no credit for that. None of those goals count and none of those points count. Is it because it's too recent or too close, or like you say that it would have affected Ovechkin's chase? Imagine if they had just thrown that in like at the last second. Hey, wait a second. You know what? We're all of a sudden going to count the WHA stats. Like if they were smart, they would do that from a marketing standpoint next season just so that there's another grade 8 chase, right? About that. I appreciate the question, John. Outstanding. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Penguins. We're going to have another one of these tomorrow.